Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm here with the Midwest Writing Center. Excited to talk to you today about self-editing. The way things normally go with our Write More Light videos. Sorry, I've got an itch. I'll talk about today's topic, then I'll give you some updates on what's up at the Midwest Writing Center, and then we'll do a free write. It's a 5-minute free write. If you have to sign out before then, more power to you, but I will do it along with you, and it is a lot of, maybe not fun, but it is a worthy exercise, and I'm always glad to have done it, and usually reluctant to get started, which is what's so great about free writes. Okay, onto the topic of self-editing. So a lot of us are not lucky enough to have a best friend who is an editor, or we're professionals out in the world with an agent and an editor and a manager. So with at least our first couple drafts, we need to really be able to rely on ourselves. Or, even if we've got a friend who will always read our stuff, we still, they're not a professional, or they don't totally know what to be looking for, etc. So we need to be our own best first ally. First things first, we need to define terms. Editing is something that is a word that people use when they're talking about a lot of different things. For our purposes today, I mean big picture editing. I don't mean copy editing. Copy editing is like grammar and punctuation. I don't mean proofreading. That's in the same vein. I don't mean small revisions. I don't mean line editing. That's looking at each sentence. We're talking about the big picture here. So let's dig into the meat and potatoes. Okay. Here is a big problem I have. A lot of the time when I start a piece, I am writing what's coming to me. And therefore, there's not really a point to begin with. I didn't sit down on purpose to write an essay about gender and sexuality. I sat down and wrote what came. And most of the time for me, when that happens, I'm writing letters, epistolaries. It's first person, but it's to someone else. And so there might not be a point, at least not right off the bat. However, if I want to keep it, if I want it to be a piece that gets sent out into the world, that gets published, that gets at least reviewed a few more times before I sacrifice it to the land of I'll use it for parts. Here's the questions that I'll ask in that regard. I have some on my computer. I didn't copy them all down to my notebook, which I normally do. So bear with me for a moment. Okay. If I just sat down and it came pouring out, what inspired me to sit down and write this? Where was I emotionally from the start? So that's the first question to ask yourself if it just came pouring out. What inspired this? What feeling was I feeling? And then a follow-up question, is that feeling conveyed to the audience? It's hard to know that as yourself, because you are already the person who's feeling things. But there are little clues along the way. Do you use feeling words? So something to do when you're scanning your own work for emotions is look for words that signify feelings. We've talked about before how verbs are really, really effective for that. So if you are flat out just saying, I feel sad, that's not going to cut it as far as making your audience feel sad. So keep that in mind. Circle it or whatever. I do my work. Hey, sweetie, come here. I do my work on paper. I write by hand, but then I'll type and then print it out. Screens and I don't get along super well. And so that's how I do it. You do it however works for you. If you do it all on your computer, highlight it, whatever. Maybe color code your highlights. Whatever is your method is going to be the thing that works best for you. So That's the first question. If it's a piece that just came pouring out, what was my catalyst? What motivated me? What inspired me to sit down and write this piece? What does this piece tell me about myself? And that'll also help you figure out if it's a piece that needs to, hi baby, that needs to be, saved and taken to the next step for editing, for putting it out into the world, or if it's a private piece, which happens sometimes. A lot of the time with me, like I said, I write epistolary. I try to really soup up a piece and make it publishable, and it takes me a year or 3 months or just a lot of time, a lot of maybe wasted time to realize that this piece was just for me. So it's important to figure that out early on, and or you can shelve a piece and come back to it to figure that out. That works too. So that was the second question. What does this piece tell me about myself? Which is an important question to ask. What did you feel while writing it? We sort of already addressed this, right? And how do you know if the reader will feel that? Again, we're looking for keywords, or we're looking to insert keywords here. So I asked at the beginning, does this piece have a point? There's a follow-up question here. Does it need to? Not all work needs to have a point or an end game. A lot of work does have a point. A lot of work needs to have a point. But my intention here is for this to be genreless questions to ask yourself. And if you are writing something from a deep place of feeling and you're writing well, that'll come across. And maybe a point isn't the point. Sorry, I was just going over to make sure that we were broadcasting live. I didn't check in the beginning. So you don't need to discern right early in the beginning if the piece has a point or needs a point, but it is something to keep in mind, keep in your back pocket about the piece as you go through the revision and editing process. I don't know where you are. I don't know what piece you're working on. What I have in mind as I'm going through how to guide others through self-editing is a piece that I've been working on for years. I believe 6. I think 6 years I've been working on this piece. It started out so different from where it is now. And then I want to say like 3 years later, it became, hi baby. It became more what it is today. And then I was looking at it again recently, trying to figure out, like what makes this piece tick, because I'm very attached to this piece. But every time I show it to the folks I rely on as editors, they're just like, it doesn't work. We have a relationship where that's an okay thing to say to me. That's another thing. If you do have editors who are not yourself, make sure that you have a good language between you. Make sure you understand each other. Make sure you know both sides, what is acceptable to say, like what you can handle, how straightforward they can be, how gentle they should be. I'm using poor language to describe the language that should happen between you and an editor, but that's the bluntest way to put it. You need to figure out within yourself first, before you work with an editor, what kind of criticism you can take. Normally, you want the compliment sandwich is the best way to give criticism. But I've been working with my primary editor for 10 years, and she knows, like, I would rather be just cut down the middle than have you dance around it. So that works for us. And she keeps telling me this piece doesn't work. And she has lots of ideas about why, and I don't like those ideas. And I know my writing the best. I know me the best. So I get to make the final call. You don't always have to listen to an outside editor. And with that, you don't always have to listen to yourself as the editor. That's confusing, I know. But say, for instance, with me, the piece that I have in mind as I'm giving this advice, I keep saying things to myself like, you need to put a scene, hi baby, into this. It doesn't make sense to have a scene. It's a letter. If you're talking directly to another person, that's a tricky thing about letters. If you're talking directly to another person, if you're talking about an experience they were there for, it is no longer believable as a piece if you're describing a scene in great detail that the other person was there for. So I keep telling myself, well, the thing that'll fix up this piece is a concrete scene. And unless I'm describing a scene that the reader, the addressee, was not there for, that doesn't make sense. So I think my advice in that direction is write down the advice you're giving yourself in plain English, or the editorial things that you say to yourself, because when you look back on these revisions, or when you give yourself a break from this work and come back maybe just a day later, maybe a month later, maybe a year later, you're going to want to know why you made the changes you made, especially if your early drafts are lost to time, which don't, save your drafts. But you're going to want to know why you made the changes, because you're going to want to be able to evaluate whether or not those were good changes to make. So write down the questions that you ask yourself about your editing. Write down the advice you give yourself about your editing, your revisions, and the piece that you're working on. Next piece of advice about this. If the piece does have a point, because some work we sit down and write on purpose, and it's not stuff that just comes pouring out, that is a great gift. If you have work that just comes pouring out, don't take that for granted. But we don't all have that, and especially we don't all have that every time. So if the piece does have a point, write down, I mean that like physically, write down what the point of the piece is. Another piece I'm working on that isn't the one I just referenced, it's not a letter, it's an essay, is about, like I said earlier, gender and sexuality. That didn't come out of nowhere. It's about sexuality. And it is an exploration of how a specific branch of people come to know their sexuality. So the point would be, for this piece, awareness first, and then also maybe resources, mostly awareness, mostly like, it's an essay. So first I'm conveying my experience, then I'm giving facts about the world and people who have this experience. So I know my point, right? I want to educate people about both the emotional and the, my office had a little bit of a remodel recently, in that I covered up the windows and got a heater in here, and Carter here is not sure how he feels about that. It's very cold in here, so covering up the window was important. So was the heater. So, right, with my essay on sexuality, am I informing my audience? Easy enough to figure out. Is there information outside of the personal? In my early drafts, no. It's just about me and my experience. So I need to get the solid information, the statistics. The statistics was what I was going for. I need to get that into the piece. It can't just be about me, because that's not my point. My point is to give education, both personal and big picture, because that's how you give information. If it's just about me, it's anecdotal, it's personal, and it's fine, but that's not what I'm going for. So I can evaluate pretty easily. Do I have that information in here? If my point is to inform, am I informing? If my point is to gain some empathy and gain awareness, which it is, do I have a balance of statistic and personal? Do I talk about humans who are not me, real humans, right? Not big picture in this instance, but like Have I spoken to other people who have this identity, and have I represented them fairly? Easy enough way to figure out if my point is coming across. Then looking at, 'cause a lot of what we do is experimental, so that's valid. I don't want that to get ignored with my next point here, which is, does the structure come across? Again, I want this to be genreless advice on self-editing, and that includes experimental work. I experiment a lot with form in particular and structure. So with that in mind, right, with my essay on sexuality, that's a very traditional structure, and I can look up, essay structure and make sure like I plug in those elements to make sure it works. But with this piece that I was talking about earlier, the one that's really in my mind right now, it started out as a letter, started out as a couple letters, right? It's an epistolary, it's very lettery. It's a piece of correspondence. I'm talking to you. But most recently, I've chopped it up into little pieces, and I'm trying to restructure it more like a poem, but with the same content. So looking at structure, is the structure what I want it to be? And how do I effectively use that structure? So you have to do a little bit of research on this, right? And again, I say write it down. However it is that you take notes, take the notes, make sure it's somehow bundled with the piece, and say, what is the general advice on this topic? What does this usually look like? Am I doing it? I didn't want to flip you off. Those are important notes to take. And I know the hardest part of self-editing is getting some distance from the piece, and that's why I think it's so important to talk about it. And unfortunately, like, you do have to do research on these things in order to effectively self-edit. You are the foremost expert on your own writing, so that is the number one benefit. But you are not probably the foremost expert on editing, and therefore referring to experts, doing the research is going to be the most beneficial thing you can do for your own work when you are self-editing. And the bonus here is you can reject their advice and mine, but I think that I'm giving you excellent advice, so don't reject it. I've got more. The rest of my notes are on the computer. So you've already asked yourself, what do I know about myself from reading this, from writing this? What experience did I have writing it? What did I learn about myself? What can the piece tell others? Again, this is assuming that you want this piece to be out in the world, published, not just the most polished version of your own experience, but a piece that's going out to the world. What can it tell others? In response to what does it tell you? With my epistolary that I keep referencing, I think that it's important to have some context, right? The reason I'm referencing my own work is because that's what I'm self-editing right now. And I think that it gives some context and, lets you know that I'm in it with you. With my epistolary, I am learning a lot about myself, but if I want this piece to go out in the world, this isn't always the case, but it is less effective as just a piece of reflection. A lot of works are amazingly effective as just a piece of reflection. Mine is not. So what do I want the world to get from it? And someone asked me this question, someone who had not read the piece, and I was like, oh, duh, I definitely need to think about that. Self-editing is hard and sometimes requires help from others. And that's something I'm still wrestling with. What do I want a reader to get out of this? What do I want an audience to get out of this? If this were on a billboard, that would be really weird. What would I want people to take away? And I've figured that out. after a lot of thinking, and this is different from the point, by the way. This is for a piece that is more emotional, a piece that came out of you. You know, what does it tell you about yourself? What do you learn about yourself from it? The next question, then, the mirror to that question is, where can it go and what can it tell others? And just in case that wasn't already clear. And for me, what I want it to tell others is a universal, which is tricky. That's a weird, it's a very particular thing. The stuff that I write is not for everyone. So if I'm looking to convey a universal, I need to make it both more and less specific. That's a totally different video. How to write the universal. I don't know what that accent was, but I liked it. Then another thing you can do is use the internet. Find out what people like me are saying, right? We've talked before about some of the jargon and a lot about like what it means to show versus tell. That is another step. That's one of the easiest steps, which I already covered. I apologize. It's weird for me to not have everything on paper in front of me, to have to look at my screen too. So this is an easy piece of advice that is more for proofreading, for making sure the words line up properly, but of course, read it out loud. And I never take that advice. I'm going to be honest with you. I never take that advice. And it shows. So often I'll repeat the word on twice. I'll be like, and she sat on the chair. Or I'll have a typo that I'll miss. And that's important stuff. But my general focus here was big picture editing. But I just don't want that to be ignored. Reading out loud makes a huge difference. If you have I want this to be genreless, right? But any genre can use dialogue or indirect quotes, right? We as human beings are writing, and our audience is other human beings. So there's a lot of experience that can be encapsulated in any genre of writing. So if you've got dialogue, say it out loud. Does this sound like something a human being would say? That happens a lot. A lot of people have trouble with dialogue because when we write, we don't necessarily write how we talk. We think that, I don't know, we think that we're going to say something prettier, or we've been trained to write with a certain kind of voice. And a lot of the time, dialogue doesn't sound like the way a narrative sounds. And say the words out loud to someone, and make sure that it sounds like something a human would say. That's something that we see a lot because we're trained to write without contractions, right? Can't, I'm, we're. Contractions are two words that become one word with an apostrophe. So something I see a lot in writing is someone will say, what is it? Or what is up? And in the real world, we say, what's that? Or what's up? Not what is that? What is up? Just an example. Say things out loud. If you use a contraction when you say it out loud, use a contraction on the page. I am, I think, finished on this little mini lesson. I've had you here for a little bit of time already, and I'm starting to get really wordy. We may revisit this topic in the future. We may not. I hope it was helpful to you. So now I'm going to go into what's up at the Midwest Writing Center. Upcoming, we still have our bespoke poetry event happening. Bespoke is custom made, so this is poems on demand. You tell us what you want out of a poem, and our professional poets write it for you. It's awesome. For a added small fee, got my own edit sitting next to me. For an added small fee, we will type it out on homemade paper with a typewriter. It's really beautiful this way. The paper is gorgeous. That will go until February 28th. And it's $20 starting out. We would love for you to tip our poets. But depending, on your poem, your demands, there will be some communication. Make sure that we're getting it right for you. But it's really, really gorgeous. And I'm not one of the poets, so you can rest assured that it won't be awkward. Another thing we've got coming up, February 26th at 5 p.m., Iron Pen Contest starts. That is a 24-hour writing contest in which you will flex your writing muscles. We will put out the prompt at 5 p.m. on Friday. That'll be on our website, on our social media, on our voicemail if you call us, or in your inbox if you're registered in advance. And then you have until 5 p.m. the next day, Saturday the 27th, to write the best piece of writing that you can. You can choose fiction, nonfiction, or poetry. And of course, you determine what that means on your own. It's $10 to register, but every single registration comes with a chance to win full tuition to the Collins Writers Conference this summer, which is going to be so amazing. I am out of my mind excited, and I can't wait to do the big reveal, but that will come when it comes. You can register as many times as you want in as many genres as you want, but you only have 24 hours to do it. So I've competed before, I've lost and I've won, and I never regret doing it. It is sometimes more difficult than others, but it's always a really, really good exercise. Coming up this week, I forgot the date for a second. My apologies. This Thursday, the 18th, 7 p.m. Central Time, we have our Local Lovers reading. This is an annual reading that we do. Usually we've got a couple of headliners, and then we do a big open mic. We're just doing the open mic this time. So hit us up, send us a private message, or email me. I'll put my email address in the comments. If you want to sign up to read, we'll give you 5 minutes, and you will read whatever it is you're working on, or sorry, typing and talking at the same time is difficult. Or, maybe you're a musician, sing us a song. If you're a dancer, do a dance. Whatever it is that you would do at an open mic, you can do at our open mic. So hit me up, let me know that you want to sign up, and we will get you there. We will get you on our virtual stage. If you don't have Facebook and you would like to attend the Zoom meeting just as an audience member, hit me up for that link as well. What else is coming up? March 15th, we've got our collaborative workshop with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. The local NAMI of the Mississippi River Valley is going to do a workshop with us on journaling for mental health. So we've got a therapist from NAMI who will be teaching. We've got Ryan Collins and Jody Toohey who will be teaching a little bit on that, and it is free or donation. So excellent to sign up. The donation will be split 50-50 between NAMI and Midwest Writing Center. So two really beautiful, important causes for mental health in the arts. I will be there. I think that I have plenty to learn, and I already know that journaling is really beneficial for me as a writer and as a human. So I'm excited to be there for that. Hit us up if you have questions, but as always, the information is all going to be on our website. And then it's not yet time to advertise. I know this, but we will be having our Cats Behave We will be having our National Poetry Month reading coming up in April. Get excited. As always, I'm super, super happy to have you here. I hope that this has been helpful, albeit wordy, and I hope that you write more light into your life. Now, we're going to go with an old favorite. We're going to do that Bernadette Meyer journal experiment for today's free write. So I'm just scrolling haphazardly here, and we're going to, sorry, we're going to write, I lost the place and I had a really exciting one. Okay, write a brief bibliography for a book that doesn't exist. I'm excited to do that. What that means. Okay, so bibliography, right, is like a works cited, the pieces of research necessary to put together a volume of text. I'm probably going to be thinking about this a little bit more like the book Perfect Vacuum, which is a book full of book reviews for books that don't exist, or Dictionary of Khazars, which is like a lexicon, but it's a novel. So that's how I'll be thinking about this, a bibliography for a book that does not exist. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock. I have to get it up. I wasn't ready. And I'm going to join you in that. So if you're taking off, as always, I hope you write more light into your life. If you're hanging out with me, we've got 5 minutes. I'm going to be doing that with you. And I am a little intimidated to get started, but excited because it's something I always wanted to do. Also, as always, feel free to just free write, journal, whatever it is that comes to you in response to this prompt. Bibliography of a text you can come up with. If you need a little more direction, the actual text of this prompt says, the science and philosophy texts that interest you. Create a file of newspaper articles that seem to relate to the chances of writing poetry. I'm just going to go with my gut. And the fun thing too is you can work backwards from this prompt, right? Once I write the bibliography, like maybe I'll flesh it out. Maybe it'll become a real piece, real, of fiction or nonfiction. It's a bibliography. Maybe the pieces in my bibliography will, of course, become their own piece, like those novels I just mentioned. Really awesome, probably for poetry too, but that idea intimidates me. I also am really enjoying this already. Sorry for interrupting. Because it's already like creating its own narrative on accident. He was good for half an hour. I also, as you know, love lists. So this is a new exercise in lists for me. I'm having a lot of fun. Every time. Every time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think that self-editing is really an important tool to keep in your belt, and I think I will probably revisit this segment later with more tips. And also, that was the most free write I think I've done in a year. I really love lists. I really love being surprised, and it was a very surprising free write for me. So I feel like I have written more light into my life today, and I hope that you feel the same way. As always, all my best. Write more light.